this question asks, how optimistic are you? And to that, I will say I feel like, and I hope from my other answers you've garnered that I'm fairly optimistic about life. But I'm going to read some of the other questions and then kind of delve into why I think I'm optimistic. So, in the question it reads, how well do you respond to adversity? When a problem arises, do you tend to see it as personal, permanent, and pervasive? Do you feel like a hopeless victim with little control over the situation? No. And do you catastrophize, imagining that things are just going to get worse? Again, no. Or do you respond well to adversity? Do you see it as an exciting challenge to overcome? Do you have a strong sense of self-efficacy and empowerment where you believe you can surmount any obstacle? And to those ones, yes. And so I really think this speaks to a kind of difference in perception about life. And I'm a cognitive science major. That doesn't mean I'm an expert on perception or anything, but I guess it leaves me with something to reflect on, given that idea that there's these two perspectives here. One is that things are helpless, hopeless. It's you hit a wall and there's no way to go around it. There's no way to bypass it. You don't have control over the situation. And the other perception seems to be that okay, there's something there, but I'm gonna pick it up and run with it. Or yeah, I bumped into it, but there's other ways to approach the situation. Or maybe I can work with the wall and do something with it. And I think in terms of perception, I'm optimistic in that I do see things, and I feel that other optimistic people see things in terms of what's possible. And what helps with that is, I think, two things. It's four. One is, again, I've kind of, I guess, trained my mind through just telling myself over and over again when I come into difficult situations, how can I see this as a learning experience? And again, for me, learning is a positive thing, and is a baseline of, if you feel like if everything's been taken away from you in a negative situation, it's the worst thing in the world, where's your first starting point? And for me, it's, what can I learn from this? How can I interpret what happened? How can I figure out the things that went into this happening? Or how can I, kind of zoom out of the situation, look back at it, reflect on it? And in that moment of, wow, everything's gone to a really bad place, this is something that you can take. This is something you can take back. You can give your brain something to feed on, and that's a positive thing. So you were knocked down to your lowest point, but already your first positive step is, what can I learn from this situation? And I think when you start to have that perspective and that perception, it starts to change things, in that you become more optimistic, because once you can get that little step, then you can take the next step, and you can take the next step, then you can take the next step. And so one thing I think that helps with my optimism, and that I suggest for anyone that would look to be more optimistic, is start thinking of things in the frame set of, what can I learn from this situation? Where, what went wrong, what went right, what can I use next time, how can things be different? And I think that'll help, and it helps me. The other thing, aside from what can you learn about, is having past experiences that do show that things have gone right. And even more importantly is, if you have had that extreme bottom experience where you feel, wow, it can't get any worse, or this is an extremely negative event, and then having something later that says, wow, this is an extremely positive event, and knowing that that discrepancy, that change can happen. It's not always at this low point, but it may fluctuate, but the idea that it can go from here back down to here, but at the same time it can go from here back up to here, and just knowing that that possibility is there, and again having something to point back to it that says that not only is it there, but it's possible, and it has happened in my life or in someone else's life. And I guess two examples of that are in our class, the social change class. There's a man named Scott Sherman who came in. He's one of the partners of the nonprofit that puts this class on, transformative action. And he told us a story about a extremely negative point in his life. And he proceeded to say how from that negative experience he grew, and he then, what we call in the class, positive fived it, in the sense that he went from some negative aspect, something that was negative 5, and transformed it into a positive 5 experience. So again, showing that that change can happen. And when he looked back on it, he said, wow, if that event hadn't happened, if that negative thing hadn't happened, I wouldn't be where I am today, and I wouldn't be feeling as good as I feel today, and I wouldn't be having this positive 5 experience. And that again, for me, was like, oh wow, this can happen to other people. They can have this extremely negative event that to them and to others seems just like a terrible, terrible thing, and then you can go a complete 180 and turn it into something that you wouldn't have been able to turn into unless you had that negative event. And for me, that came through as my parents got divorced, and I thought that that was the most terrible thing ever. And for me, it was a revelation that life isn't perfect, the world isn't perfect. And looking back though, as a starting point, I felt pretty bad about it, and I was able to come so far as to go to UCLA, get involved with a phenomenal program known as Unicamp, and a shout out to Yin Lu. If you ever watch this, thank you for that. I know you've heard it before, but just saying. And then this class, and the opportunity to do this, and to speak about my optimism. And so, for me, these experiences, especially going back to Unicamp, of seeing people come together around something that they want to do, their value, which is to give Los Angeles children from a variety of school districts, but from families that are at or below the poverty line, a better chance of going to a higher education. Seeing people come together around that, putting on the event, and then seeing the effects of that event in place, it's just been really inspiring. And to have that experience is something to build my optimism from, to know that bad things can become good things, and they can be a starting point for good things to happen from. So that's where I think I drive my optimism from, and I hope that you can take some of that optimism or that optimistic strategy with you. And if anyone else has any ideas about how they are optimistic or how they perceive life, because maybe it isn't those two perceptions of I can't really do anything and oh, there's a possibility here, maybe there's some more intricacies to it, definitely post them or talk about them. So yeah, here's to optimism.